Greetings, welcome back. My name is Cameron Miller, and this is a sermon for the 6th Sunday of Pentecost. Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, my prayers have been for God to help those who are waging peace, to help those who are trying to stop the violence. And then one day, as I was sitting by the lake, I looked out and I saw the smoke from the Canadian wildfires. The haze was so thick that I could barely see the other side of the lake, which never happens, even in the soupiest morning fog. Everyone I spoke with during those smoke-filled days shared this same ominousity. Now, that's not a word, but it felt ominous to folks. It was like, uh-oh, this is going to start happening more and more, isn't it? And sitting there, offering up my morning prayers with the dog sitting next to me as she always does, thinking it's about her, it smacked me in the face that we don't have a prayer. I mean, it isn't about God helping us to help ourselves. We need God to make peace happen. We need God to kick our butts and force fit us into a more humanizing mold. And those ancients were totally right. We don't stand a chance of surviving ourselves without some direct intervention from the God of all that is. Jesus described it well in this week's gospel from Matthew chapter 10, when he says, "To what will I compare this generation? It's like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another, we played the flute for you, but you did not dance. We wailed for you, but you did not mourn." And then Jesus adds his own little personal testimony. He says, "John came fasting, and they said he was possessed. I came sharing community around a table, and they said I was a glutton and a drunkard." In other words, nothing is good enough for us, and anyone who tries to fix us is immediately discredited and discarded. I realize, of course, that God's effort to fix things has not always gone well either. I mean, the Garden of Eden, Noah's zoological cruise, Moses in the Exodus, Solomon in the Civil War in Israel, even Jesus in the Kingdom of Heaven. None of those events fixed us. And even the ones that helped for a little, it wasn't long before we were right back to our own self-destructive ways. But for the last 300 years, God, as a source of help, has basically been poo-pooed. We could not, with cold reason and cool logic, prove God can intervene or have anything to do with principalities and powers running what's going on down here on planet Earth. So we pretty much relegated God to warm thoughts and spectacular mysteries that don't truly intersect with our existence. Now, some of us have hoped against hope from time to time that God will hear our prayers about the people we love, who are ill or in danger or doing stupid things or flying a long way someplace in an airplane. We don't know how prayers work or even if they do work. And we try not to think about that too much. We just do it and cross our fingers. But really, truly, God has no place in this world that requires laboratory manufactured proof. There are some brilliant mathematicians and physicists who do posit God and see an opening for a mystery we cannot measure or replicate, but they aren't leading the pack, and they play in a science that doesn't use a laboratory to verify hypotheses. Jesus' prayer of gratitude to God for hiding such things from the wise and the intelligent while being revealed to infants and goofballs is kind of an interesting thought. But all of this takes me back to very ancient people howling at the moon and dancing around the fire and recognizing that they don't have a chance in hell of surviving without help from God. Now, I don't know if they recognize their utter foolishness and self-destructive natures, which is what I'm kind of talking about, or if they simply understood the limits of their powers in the face of nature's magnificent majesty that could crush them like a bug or drown them like a rat or burn them up to a crisp. But while we have a huge technological foot up on those ancient folks, we seem utterly incapable of recognizing that we are not self-sufficient, and that in fact, left to our own devices, we'll kill ourselves. Surrounded by so much that is ominous, I want to tell you how it is that I still pray. And how it is that despite the secular consensus that God doesn't do anything, even if there is a God, how it is that I have reverted to an ancient understanding that the Creator of all that is will do stuff to help us. Now, I don't know if I've told you this story before, but if I did, please indulge me like your old weird uncle who forgets the dog's name. I once spent 3 weeks in Guatemala trying to learn Spanish. I was a spectacular failure, just like I had been my sophomore year in high school. But I tried harder in Guatemala with the same results. But that's not the story here. It was a small city known for its historic beauty and for its language schools. And I lived with a family who would only speak Spanish to me with me and attended a school where the only Spanish was spoken. So, it was difficult. It was an uncomfortable time, surrounded by the vestiges of the past and bodies on the street. Yes, literally. I passed bodies on the street that may have been dead and dying. I don't know. I was like the priest in Jesus' Good Samaritan story. And I was confronted by beggars and children begging and selling stuff, asking for money at every street corner and many of the cafes where I ate. I spent the first couple of days being there feeling guilty and ashamed. Gracias, no gracias, I repeated over and over again as children aggressively hawked bracelets on the street. No, lo siento, I said to beggars, not making eye contact as I said I was sorry, but I wouldn't give them any money. Long story short, it struck me how deeply flawed my reactionary self-preservation instinct was. While my resources were not unlimited, and I was going to be there for quite some time, I figured out how to say, sí, salud, instead of gracias, no gracias. The fact is, in that kind of economy before smartphones and Apple Pay, and you're a tourist, you start to collect a lot of change. When the exchange rate is wildly uneven, your pockets start to feel like sandbags, so you try to figure out how not to get more coins, how not to make change. But I bought a change purse, and instead of avoiding change, I began to make sure I had plenty of coins all the time. I even went out of my way to get them. I made it my goal to never say gracias, no gracias, and always to have at least one coin to give if asked. And the other thing I could do, I decided, was whatever somebody was looking for, to look them in the eyes. I could stop. I could stop what I was doing, where I was going, whatever. I could stop. I could look him or her in the eyes and say, sí, salud, and give them something. Now, I'm sure I didn't do that perfectly. I don't do anything very perfectly. But I pretty quickly went from a sense of scarcity to a sense of abundance. I no longer walked around under a cloud feeling like something ominous was going to happen, and instead greeted the streets as an opportunity to meet colleagues in need and to be responsive to them. It changed everything. Well, not how poorly I was doing in Spanish or how badly I was communicating in my adopted home, but it caused me to feel empowered instead of powerless. si, salud, instead of gracias, no gracias. And then, so I discovered that it was truly weird how fast the heaviness left, and how suddenly what had just seemed ominous dissipated. In that decision to say, si, salud, instead of yes, literally, yes, bless, and to look those that I encountered in the eyes, the impossible became possible. And even though I didn't know how it would turn out or if it would have any impact at all one way or the other, it changed everything for me. I believe what those ancients believed, that we are, human beings, are incapable of living well if all we have is ourselves and our own resources. I believe that, in fact, if God is not present with us or in the equation somehow, we will continue to do poorly. And it seems very clear to me now, though I could not prove it in a laboratory or with a mathematical equation, that it requires very little from God for human beings to turn around and thrive. It's almost miraculous how fast we go from no to yes when we are just even a little bit open to the presence of God in our midst. Thank you, and peace be with you. I hope I see you next week.